Hi, my name is Lauren Mitchell, and I'm here to share something that completely changed my life, something I never expected and couldn't have imagined. It's not just a story about a near-death experience. It's about what happens when you step out of this world and into eternity. On February 8th, my life took a dramatic turn after a horrific car accident. What I experienced during those moments will stay with me forever, and I believe God has called me to share it with you. It started like any other day. I'm a trauma nurse in San Diego, California, and I've been working in emergency medicine for over 15 years. My days are usually intense and chaotic, filled with patients who need immediate care. Over the years, I'd learned to stay calm under pressure and focus on the task at hand. Even though I grew up in a Christian household, my faith had become more of a background belief. I rarely went to church, and my prayers were quick and occasional, usually when I felt overwhelmed. Life was busy, and I convinced myself that there just wasn't enough time to focus on spiritual things. That morning, February 8th, started like any other. I got in my car, coffee in hand, and drove through the city streets as the sun rose over the horizon. I was mentally preparing for another long shift, thinking about my patients and what the day would bring. I remember stopping at a red light, taking a sip of my coffee, and letting out a deep breath. And then, everything changed. As I sat at the intersection, a semi-truck came barreling through the red light at full speed. It hit my car with such force that the vehicle was crushed and thrown into a nearby pole. Witnesses later said the impact was so severe that they didn't think anyone could have survived. The next thing I remember is silence, complete silence. I didn't feel the impact, the pain, or the chaos. It was like everything had stopped. When the paramedics arrived, they found my body pinned in the driver's seat. My heart had stopped beating. I was clinically dead for over 9 minutes. But during those 9 minutes, something extraordinary happened. While my lifeless body was trapped in the wreckage, I found myself in a completely different place. I was no longer tied to the chaos of the accident. Instead, I began a journey into a realm that was unlike anything I had ever imagined. The moment my heart stopped, everything changed. 1 second, I was sitting in my car, and the next, I was somewhere else entirely. It was as though I had stepped out of my body and into another reality. I remember looking down and seeing the accident scene. I could see my car completely crushed, the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles, and the paramedics working to pull my body from the wreckage. They were moving frantically, calling out instructions and doing everything they could to revive me. But even as I watched, I didn't feel connected to it. There was no fear, no pain, no anxiety, just a sense of detachment and overwhelming peace. It was like I was observing the scene from above, but it didn't feel like it was my body down there. Then, in the distance, I saw it, a light. At first it was small, almost like a star on the horizon, but it grew brighter and larger as I focused on it. This wasn't just any light, it was alive. It radiated warmth, love, and a pull that I couldn't resist. It felt like it was calling me home. As I moved toward the light, the accident scene faded away. I was no longer aware of the paramedics, the car, or the noise. All I could see was the light and the presence waiting for me within it. That's when I saw him, Jesus. His presence was overwhelming, yet comforting. He didn't look exactly like the paintings or pictures we see, but there was no doubt in my mind that it was him. His face radiated love and compassion, and his eyes seemed to see right through me. They held infinite wisdom, as if he knew every thought, every emotion, every part of my soul. When he spoke, it wasn't like words being spoken aloud. His voice resonated inside me, filling every part of my being. "Lauren," he said, "you are here because there is something you need to see. I have a purpose for you." Jesus reached out his hand, and as soon as I took it, everything around us changed. I was no longer in the light. Instead, I was standing in a place that felt both infinite and intimate. The first thing I noticed was the incredible clarity. It was as though my senses had been enhanced, and I could see, hear, and feel things with a depth I had never experienced before. The air itself seemed alive, humming with energy and purpose. Jesus began to show me a vision. He allowed me to see the paths of people entering eternity. Some were entering heaven, radiant and joyful, filled with a peace that surpassed understanding. Others, however, were walking into darkness, their faces filled with confusion and regret. I could feel Jesus' sadness as he watched those who were lost. "So many have rejected me," he said. "Even now my heart aches for them." As Jesus showed me more, I was taken to two very different places, realities that coexist but are separated by an eternal divide. The first place was heaven. I don't even know how to begin describing it because it was so far beyond anything we can imagine on earth. The colors were richer, the air was alive, and there was a sense of harmony and love that felt like the very essence of God Himself. I saw souls who had entered heaven. They radiated peace and joy, and they were worshiping God in a way that felt completely pure and natural. There was no sadness, no pain, no regret, just complete unity with their Creator. Then, in an instant, the vision shifted, and I found myself looking at the opposite reality: hell. Hell was not the fiery, dramatic place you might imagine. It was much worse. It was a place of complete separation from God, and that separation was the source of unbearable torment. There was darkness, but it wasn't just physical darkness. It was a heavy, suffocating absence of love and hope. I saw souls there, and their anguish was heartbreaking. They cried out in regret, desperate for another chance, but it was too late. They realized that their choices, rejecting Jesus, living for themselves, had led them there. Jesus' sadness was overwhelming. "It is not my will that any should perish," he said, "but I have given humanity free will, and their choices have eternal consequences." As we moved through the vision, Jesus revealed to me the dangers of false teachings. He showed me how many people are led astray by beliefs that distort the truth about who He is. I was taken to a moment in history where I saw a man teaching a crowd. At first, his words sounded good. He spoke of morality, discipline, and devotion. But as I listened closer, I realized his teachings denied the very essence of who Jesus is. He rejected Jesus as the Son of God and denied His sacrifice on the cross. "This man is one of many false prophets," Jesus said. "He teaches half-truths, which are the most dangerous lies. He leads people away from the path of salvation, convincing them they can earn favor with God through works alone." I watched as generations of people followed these teachings, sincerely believing they were on the right path, only to enter eternity and realize they had been deceived. The weight of their regret was unbearable. Despite the sadness of what I saw, Jesus also showed me hope. I saw individuals who had been raised in false beliefs discovering the truth about Him. Some had dreams where Jesus appeared to them. Others found hidden Bibles or encountered Christians who boldly shared their faith even in the face of persecution. "These are the ones who seek me with all their hearts," Jesus said. "I will always reveal myself to those who truly seek the truth." I realized how urgent the message of salvation is. There are so many people who don't know the real Jesus, who He is and what He has done for us. Time is short, and the stakes are eternal. As my journey continued, Jesus turned to me and said, "Lauren, your time here is not finished. You must go back and share what you have seen. My people need to know the truth. They need to understand that I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." He continued, "Do not be afraid to speak boldly. Many will reject this message, but there are those who are searching, those who are ready to hear. You must tell them about my love and the reality of eternity." Suddenly I felt a pull, as though I was being drawn back. The light began to fade, and the sounds of the accident scene grew louder. I opened my eyes to the shocked faces of the paramedics. I was alive. They later told me I had been clinically dead for over 9 minutes. By all accounts, I shouldn't have survived, and even if I did, I should have suffered severe brain damage. But here I was, fully alert and completely aware of what I had just experienced. Waking up in that hospital bed, I knew I couldn't go back to the life I had before. What I experienced during those 9 minutes changed everything: the love, the peace, the urgency. It was all so real, so undeniable. At first, I struggled to process everything. How could I explain what I had seen? How could I possibly put into words the depth of the love and the heartbreak I felt in Jesus' presence? But deep down, I knew that Jesus had sent me back for a purpose. My life looks very different now. I've returned to my work as a trauma nurse, but I see every patient, every colleague in a completely different light. I know that each person I encounter is loved deeply by God, that their soul carries immense worth. Even in the chaos of the ER, I remind myself that every moment matters because eternity is real. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: eternity is not something we can afford to ignore. Heaven and hell are real, and the decisions we make in this life have eternal consequences. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. It's not about being perfect or doing enough good deeds. It's about accepting the gift of His sacrifice and surrendering your life to Him. His love for you is greater than anything you can imagine. He sees you, He knows you, and He's calling you to come to Him. No matter where you are or what you've done, it's not too late. Jesus longs to have a relationship with you, to show you the peace and joy that come from walking with Him. If my story has spoken to your heart, I encourage you to take a moment right now to reflect. Ask yourself, do I truly know who Jesus is? Am I living with eternity in mind? What steps can I take today to deepen my relationship with Him? I invite you to pray and ask Jesus to reveal Himself to you. He is faithful, and if you seek Him with all your heart, you will find Him. If you've had a similar experience, or if you have questions about faith, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a space where we can encourage and uplift one another. And if this story has touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can spread the truth and love of Jesus to those who need it most. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, Jesus loves you more than you can imagine, and His arms are always open, waiting for you to come to Him. May God bless you abundantly.